Hi, and welcome to a new podcast from Page One, which we have tentatively entitled Drafting Notes, which is basically I had an idea that it would be good to have a little shorter episode where, just writing things that come up that occur to us, or if there's something in the news we want to talk about, that we could have a chat about it.
Without any of those pesky guests getting
Without the pesky guests, exactly. So you will get
that might be a
our
massive
expert
turn off for
advice.
people.
Exactly, instead. But no, the topic that I wanted to discuss today, which is something that I'm going through with my own writing, so I thought it would be useful to people, is useful to me, hopefully, anyway, at least, was, when you've got a story that you've written, but for whatever reason, you haven't sold it, or you maybe even abandoned it halfway through or something, but you want to rework it and stuff. I mean, how do you deal with that sort of thing? Because I always find it difficult to put a new spin on something once it's down there. Obviously, there's the drafting process where you will change it as you draft, but I'm someone that kind of tries to edit as I go. And especially if I've finished something, to then go back to it and then say, right, I need to take a completely new approach to this idea.
I think it's really easy to get locked into that kind of like the story. I think I and as you go along, the more pieces you lock in, you're planning it so far ahead, and you think, "Oh, this has to happen, that has to happen," and you're almost railroading yourself down a path, aren't you? Sometimes,
I think that's exactly it.
Taking a step back and being like, "Oh, it doesn't have to go. It could go." I mean, like I'm trying to think of. I remember getting to a point right in the Midnight King where midway through there's a kind of twist moment, and I literally got to a point and I was like, I don't like where this is going. This is getting a bit too. It was feeling quite boring almost, and I was like, I had these two protagonists who were going down, and they were both after the same thing, and I was like, how do I differentiate? This is going to be quite a dull story. And then, and so I was like, well, what if I just did X instead of Y? Just total random. And I hadn't planned for it at all, and I hadn't prepped for it. And then I kind of had to go back and seed it to make it work and stuff a little bit. But
did you do that seeding at the time, or did you just write the bit that you'd thought
no,
of then go back to the seeding?
I just kept on going, and then went back. Okay. And then afterwards I was like, what do I need to put in here to make it work?
So I find even doing that. Yeah, I find it almost even doing that quite difficult, because it plays in my mind. Because if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to like set this up. I should go and do that first. But then that can take the momentum out of what
I know. See, that's it. I think you almost want to like block off that first half, whatever, and say, well, I'll just have to pretend that I have done it, and just don't think. Yeah. I think if I'm bad for not being able to leave stuff that I know I need to fix. In the rearview mirror, and it is difficult, I think. And I honestly think I am also like you. I am bad at thinking of other ways to make things happen when I've started to kind of lock myself into that path, and it takes something like that kind of outside thought of this book is shit. You need to do something else here, like to actually. And Robert Rutherford, another author who we chatted before at festivals, he told me something which is quite interesting. I think it was his mate, another writer. He does this every 10,000 words. He like a gun goes off, or a car crash happens, or something. Right, okay. Like, he just puts some kind of action.
I thought you meant literally a gun. Every 10,000 words,
he just fires a gun to the air. Yeah,
and shoots it out the window. And if he kills someone, that adds a whole thing to the book.
Goes into the story. Yeah, no, and so he just like every 10,000 words, he's always conscious, I guess, of it being too
boring.
Slow,
too
boring,
that,
and he just chucks in. And I don't know if you keep all of them or not, but I think that something like that is a way just to be like, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and you might end up going down a path you hadn't thought about.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I suppose, I mean, we've kind of veered slightly off. It's more when what I find really difficult is that's good for if you're drafting. But if you have it down there
already, already got it written down.
If you've already got, and I suppose we've spoken about this on the podcast. I'm more of a planner than you, but it's not even so much the plan. It's once it's actually done. Once I've got chapters down, to then go back and say, right, this bit doesn't work, and I can recognize that. but I find it very difficult to then think, right, how do I make it work? How do I get away from what I was thinking before, kind of a thing. I think
I
you
mean,
need to
what
take a
about?
completely
I think
fresh
you.
spin on it,
Yeah,
almost.
I'll go say you almost want like some kind of. I mean, this is the dreaded AI, but you almost want something like a like where you could say to something, "I've got
Well,
X,
you
Y,
can use
Z."
beta readers for the same purpose, and they're
Yes,
humans,
you
and
could,
you
I
can,
suppose.
yeah, yeah,
Um, because I think you almost do want to be like, okay, if my characters are doing X, Y, Z, what else could they do at this point, or what else, and some. It is really difficult when you're locked in like that, though. I think that I definitely struggle with that as well, and
and
and I, and I know what you mean. That feeling of like this is boring. This is something about it's not feeling
something isn't
right.
quite working here.
Yeah,
Like I like some bits of it, but some bits of it aren't working. It's difficult. And the other thing that I find difficult with it is, because I could phone you up or one of our other writing friends up and say, look, I'm stuck at this bit. Something's not quite working. But the other thing that I'm dreadful at is explaining a book to someone
oh
before it's
yeah,
completely done.
yeah.
So
I
like
hate
I
that.
carry it all up
It's not
here.
even. But
In
it's not
my
even.
head, it makes
Oh
sense, but
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And it
To
sounds
then try and
shit.
yeah,
And it's
to try
you're
to
talking for like
explain it
10 minutes, and
exactly.
it's like.
Exactly. Even as even as I'm saying it, I'm like, God, this is shit. Why am I even trying to write this? Um,
Yeah, I hate that as well. I think everybody hates that. It's fucking distilling stuff into that, like, 2-minute pitch is a disgusting thing that people have to do,
yeah,
especially when it's not 100% certain yet, or even if you're. And I think often is when I'm explaining stuff, a pitch for a book, and it's coming out really badly, it's probably because I know I'm not really happy with it, or that I know there's some parts which haven't worked out yet, or not sure what's going on. Um, Because so basically you've got a book that you are wanting to kind of work on again,
uh-huh.
or you have worked on it a few times in the
Well,
past,
that's the
and
other thing is that
you're worried that it's
it's a story that I have worked on a few times already, and it's not that the situation that I've got it up to is bad, but I still think that I need to rework it a bit more. And every time I come back to it, it becomes harder and harder to veer away from
yeah,
the story that is already there, and particularly to do something drastic, which sometimes I think stories need.
yeah,
But I find it very difficult to see the drastic thing because I suppose because it's like a tree now, if you like, with its branching pathways. And if I start hacking away at
yeah.
the
It's a
root, I'm
lot of
worried the whole
work.
thing will just fall
I know.
apart.
I think the danger is the more
That's
you
a terrible
write.
analogy, but yeah,
But I think the danger is the more you write, and the more paths, branching paths, etc. You have psychologically, if he dies at this point, and that's
yeah,
a massive
that's
twist, whatever. But then I have to rewrite everything after this
yeah,
point.
yeah,
So
yeah. Uh-huh.
and that is also a horrible thing to contemplate, I suppose. So I think it is
So
difficult. I wonder if you could go through and just be like maybe mark points throughout the manuscript where where you think either it's not working or it's ripe for a potential left field moment or something.
yeah,
Um,
I think
and
that's
just
right.
kind of
And
let
equally
yourself
go through the manuscript and think these are the things that no matter what changes,
has to
these things
happen.
have
Yeah.
to happen if this is the story I'm wanting to
It's
tell.
probably a lot less of those than you think. I
Yeah,
bet
I
there's probably
think
a lot less tentpole moments that have to be in it. Um, and then I think you also need to give yourself permission to like to just let your mind go mad and pick and go down crazy paths that are stupid or don't go anywhere, but follow them through because I think breaking out of that mold is really difficult, and I think you do just need to just just go for it.
yeah, I mean, I think something that has helped me, maybe not so much, like I say, when I've got something that has been worked on and worked on and worked on. It's a bit like cooking. If you overwork a dough or whatever, then it falls to pieces. And sometimes that can happen to a story as well. But today's my day for terrible analogies. But what can work sometimes if I'm what you were referring to when you're writing it and you get stuck at a point and you think this is boring. Sometimes just jump. I will sometimes just jump ahead or jump to something that I think, right, I want this to happen, and if I can get back in the flow of writing that, then that can sometimes spark what
See,
I need to
that's
fix
the same
back
thing. I think
along.
that's
Yeah,
that's if you can do that, I think you basically are able to like to throw twists in and then to go back and fill in the setup later on.
yeah,
Um, I think it's probably harder to do with it when you've got a complete manuscript than it is when you're writing.
yeah.
You
I
know,
think that's true.
I wonder what would happen if you like just if you sat down and just wrote out the plot in a separate document, like from scratch, and just wrote it out, and then but as if you're writing it out for the first time, or as if you were still fleshing out a novel you hadn't written yet,
Hmm.
and just let your mind kind
I mean,
of
I'm doing
take you
that in my
different
head right
directions.
now, and I'm already just putting back down what I've already got
Already
in the
hating
manuscript. Just
it.
like this. No, but then this has to happen because that's what's happened. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Um, it's a tricky one, but I think the answer probably does lie somewhere in Rutherford's gun, as we'll call it, like
With the
Chekhov's gun.
Fritz gun, I like that.
Um,
Yeah,
no,
I
but
think you
just throwing
going through and being
something
like, "What if this happened?"
unexpected.
What,
Yeah,
just random.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
and then running it
seeing
down the line
maybe
where
try to
you take
break,
it.
almost try to break your story and see if that makes it better or worse, and just
Yeah,
have a think about that sort of thing.
I certainly was working on a book at one point where I was like kind of conscious of that. It's been about 10,000 words or so since there's been any action, and word is getting a bit stale. I just had someone like trying to break down someone's door, and then without any thought of what it meant or blah blah. It could have been just a nothing scene, but then it ended up actually tying it back in, and it ended up being a really important part of the
Yeah.
story, which I
Uh-huh.
would never have done if I hadn't thrown it in. And I remember reading a Michael Connelly book years ago, one of the Bosch books, where there's a scene when Bosch and his partner are driving down the freeway in LA, and um, their back windscreen gets like shot up by a sniper, and it's a whole big thing of them like pulling off the road, snipers coming in, SWAT team going in looking for this guy, blah blah. And then it like literally it never gets mentioned again. And afterwards, I was like, that whole scene was obviously just like a red herring of like you assumed it was part of the main story, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just a random sniper. And maybe there was some explanation of who he was. I
I
can't
mean, I
remember,
like
but
it. Yeah, maybe it
yeah,
just. So what you're saying, I think what I'm
just
taking from this,
just
just
put
to
a sniper
round
in.
up, round up what we've discussed here, is that when you get bored in a book, just have a shooting scene.
Have a shooting scene,
Have a random shooting scene,
have a
and
random
that'll
shooting
fix
scene,
it.
and maybe it would tie in. It probably won't, but does it
Yeah,
matter?
maybe,
It's been
maybe
quite
not,
fun.
but it'll make it more exciting and
Yeah.
unpredictable. Well, I mean, if any of our listeners or viewers have any ideas like that, or how they get over that sort of thing, then we'd love to hear it as well. Because
But
we want these episodes to be a bit more interactive. If you've got ideas that we could discuss about specific bits of writing, then that would be brilliant as well. But I will get back to my manuscript now, and I know that I'm going to put in at least 3 more shooting scenes.
have you ever tried writing drunk? I know that's something
Uh,
people, some folk do. They actually do.
no,
I don't know if
I
they're
mean,
alcoholics.
yeah,
My,
exactly, yeah.
but
Some people
my
do
worry
that. I
would
mean,
be
Stephen
that.
King used to write when he was like full of cocaine, so maybe that
I
would
mean,
work as well.
imagine though. Imagine if you were absolutely hammered, wrote the most incredible book you've ever written. The pressure to then just get drunk every
Yeah,
night, and you'd
that's it.
probably end up dying.
But you'd write some great
An
books,
incredible book.
and I think that is a good place to end this episode on. Okay, cheers.